So in this video, I look at the setting up of the new academic year 2024-2025, where we would have to be an admin, as I showed you that you have to log in as the super admin or the big admin. In this case, KT Koto. Now, you see the last tab, that's the most important tab to keep in the back of your mind, so that when you are going through this entire process, if you find something is missing, you go to the last tab, you look into those drop down fields, and you would filter it out. The examples are shown, for example, is subjects, the grades, the structure of the school. That's where it is done in the last tab setup. So as we go through this video, we would always keep in our back of our mind, education setup starts with the last tab. So let's start this presentation. We are now logged in as the system administrator. And as the system administrator, you would go to administration. You would have to click on setup to expand all the hidden fields on the setup. Then you look at your administrative boundaries, which is basically the structure of the country and of how education is run into the country. So we have it set up as the 7 parishes. We do know it's district based, but let's leave it as the 7 parishes. It's more easy for management that way as compared to the district. You can merge the data after, but you cannot merge it if you bulk it together at district levels. So this is the area level administrative setup for the system, and that basically is done already. You don't have to do that going forward in the future. Little edits may come about if there is a significant change, but that's how it is set up at this point in time. So that's administrative boundary. We would not spend much time there. That's pretty much understood. The only reason we're showing you this tab so that you would understand that the list of countries could be added here for students who would be coming from other countries into the Grenada education system. We need to add them in so that when you select the country that they are coming from, it's there in the system. The academic periods, well, of course, we are just going to close out 2023-2024. We just closed 2023-2024 in June, July. So we need to manage that. Let's go to the academic status and see how that is done. The periods for this academic status, 2023-2024, it's current. What we want to do is try to get now 2024-2025 added into the system. Simply click the button at the top, the plus button at the top, and then you would set it as the current school year. Notice you cannot change the current school year by saying no, it wouldn't work. What you have to do is set a current school year, and then the old school year automatically loses that power of being the current school year. So I would have set up, by clicking add button, I would set up 2024-25. This is very simple to do, so I don't have to show you the details. Here it is, and I'll edit it now and say this is the current school year. So select edit and we see the current school year saying current saying none, so a no. So now we set it as yes, and once we do that, it will change the entire structure of the field. We could come back and edit the true dates, end dates, and start dates in the future when we get it from the official documents from the Ministry of Education. So now 24-25 is the current school date, and 23-24 has lost that power of being the current school year. Now we could move on to the educational structure, which has a number of tabs that we have to do every year because we have to restructure. Now we could copy an education structure from a past year once we have it well organized. So basically we are going to do it manually until we are satisfied, and then once we have a mature year, then we'll just roll it across with the copy function, which we are not showing you right now, but that function is available for copying. For example, we should have just copied 2023-2024 and just move it across to 2024-2025, the new coming school year. But at present, we are looking at 24-25 added into the system. I've added in some structures from pre-primary, secondary, lower secondary, upper secondary. And if you go through this video and I go through the system, you should be able to understand the whole flow of the education system from a back end, from an administrative point of view. This is how education is actually seen in the eyes of the administrators. So notice if you don't do a step before, then the steps after becomes quite mute null, because the data has to exist from system to level, cycles, programs, grades, right down to the subjects. And of course, again, remember setup is where you go to pull anything that is missing from the system in terms of a drop down field. You use setup in this case here. So let's run into it and try to see if we could do some setup at this point in time. So the first thing we want to do is look at what is there. So generally we say the education field has technical and academic. We should have just said academic and technical, but general, we usually say general subjects and academic and technical. We should really have these inside there, but it's difficult to do this because some students are on both pathways, or most students are on both pathways, and then it becomes challenging. But the education level, so we set up 24, 25, and we are setting up lower secondary. I started with lower secondary here. So you see I'm putting the age of admission as 11 after they do common entrance and they come in. So that's 11. So I'm going to set up now another secondary piece, which is called upper secondary, which would be from Form 3, Form 4, Form 5, or Form 4, Form 5, which is called upper secondary education. And there should be around 13, 14 there. To the general core understanding is around 14. So that's the secondary education. Then I'm going to set up now what I'm looking to set up here is primary. So I'm setting up primary, and they come into primary around 5 years. So that's the entrance for admission in the primary school. So all these things have been set up. So you'll have to set this up. But as I said, anything you have prior, like these setups that you do on your test them and they are good, going in the future, you don't have to repeat this task. We'll just copy this whole thing and roll it over year to year into the next academic year database. So for example, in 2026, 25, 26, we'll just roll over once we are comfortable with what we have done. All right. So here is my coding structure. I just would have said, listen, the best way to code is just put the academic year 24, 25 or 24-25, but I put 24, 25 primary, and the name, I keep the name like that, so I'm doing pre-primary there. So it should be 24, 25 pre-primary. The reason why I'm being so, I have a word for that, vocal or verbose, is to allow when I'm using it in a next field and I'm pulling a drop down, I know what I'm looking at instead of putting something that is so generic that I don't know what I'm looking at. So I like to be verbose on the descriptive parts like the name, fields, etc. So here I'm repeating it again just to be clear, and I think I will speed up the video at this point in time. So I'm basically trying to add in some of the programs they know, and you might ask what is programs. Programs is really the duration of that cycle of education and what it is really focused on. For example, in our case, it's basically general education, and we are cycling through any part like lower secondary for 3 years, and we are trying to get the students when they reach form 3 to do CXE and CCSLC form 3 to at least, it's kind of like a closure of lower secondary. That is how the structure is set up, but more or less we don't really do that, but that's what we are aiming to get, that at least by form 3 they should have a CCSLC certification. So that's the program. When you ask for what's the upper secondary program, well, it's a 2-year program where students aim to get a CXE certificate in whatever general area. They are all called general areas, whether it's academic, technical, or it is a technical area or a non-technical area, which you call the theoretical sciences and stuff like that. But it's just the program. That program of upper secondary is to get an endpoint certificate in 2 years. The program of lower secondary to get an endpoint certificate in 3 years. So you notice I'm putting the same structure 2024-25 sec, and then I'll fix it to show you for form 1. It shouldn't just say sec. You'll see how I come back and fix that with form 2, because when you reach to form 2, you would notice I'm saying, oh, I can't do that, so I would put F1 and F2 for the year with the type, so it makes it more unique. Here I would go about and edit it to show you that we could edit now and put F1, F2, form 1, form 2, so it would become more robust and explicit when you try to pull this. So let's add form 3, 24-25, lower sec. It should be lower secondary form 3. So that's something that we should have had there. So maybe I would have to edit it in the future to put L. The L means lower, lower secondary. Form 3 still on the lower secondary. Of course, form 3 for me means mid secondary, but lower secondary, and that's saved now. Right. So now we have these grades set up, and these are the grades across the system. So when you say someone is in form 1, they are basically in lower. Form 1 means they are in the lower secondary system education cycle. The lower secondary at the first stage, lower secondary the second stage, lower secondary the third stage. So that's how you really interpret it from an education scientific point of view. Now we want to add in the what is called the subjects. So if I pull up now secondary, you notice I have my well described forms showing up at the top, so you know what you're looking at. So I'm looking at the secondary was not just secondary, I'm looking at form 1, well, because I'm seeing F1. So in form 1 they have to be doing maths and English and those things for 8 hours. We have to populate that again. This depends on the curriculum policies that says 4 hours for maths, 4 hours for English, for per week, whatever it is. And that's how we ended with